Sound testing. Okay, this time I'm going into my. I'm going to continue on with what I was doing on the the um. I can't talk. This isn't good. I need to talk. That's how I earn a living here. For crying out. Okay, I'm going to be building off of the Ionian node, which is Nashville #1. I got some comments saying that the spreadsheets are not music. This is not music anymore, bro. It's my comments. I get it because it's like some of the worksheets I've been doing have been kind of going into like distance and stuff. But I mean, I still think it's real. I had something I had a quip I was gonna do on that, but I lost it. So I'm kind of a little slow today, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on with the Ionian, which means that our modal numbers are kind of like the same as the scale degree numbers, and we're going to continue on the 5th fret. Here, the top part of the screen is going to give you the first half of each fret. It's going to give you the point, the modal point in terms of the Nashville number, absolute Nashville number, which happens to be the same as the scale degree in this case because we're working in the Ionian mode. Then it's going to give you the Ionian or the letter of mode that we're in this case, we're working from the Ionian mode. And then it's going to give you the number 1 through 12, absolute numbering system for the notes. Then it's going to give you the note name. And the second half of each fret is going to give you the distance in half steps from the Ionian node. That would be the local distance going clockwise around the circle only one time, not taking into account octaves. And then it's going to give you where we're measuring from, the Ionian node, which is going to be represented by an I, and then the modal distance, and then which is going to be always one less than the scale degree distance because we're measuring from that point. And then it's going to give us the interval distance. All right, so that's going to be the idea. I'm going to be measuring up top again here. As I do, I'm kind of focused in on the idea that, so here's the third, that once we get to the 7, because I'm on the Ionian, so I'm kind of like, I personally haven't played in the Ionian as much. I know that's weird, I guess, from a Western music standpoint, because I played more in the Aeolian on the guitar, and I've never really played the piano except to kind of noodle around on the piano, but I didn't know exactly what I was doing, so I was probably playing Aeolian on the piano. I don't know. But so that means so I'm thinking I'm working in this lead-in tone. Seems to be the most important thing that is different in the Aeolian. So you get that pretty lead-in tone as opposed to the 7th being used in the minor scale more as just kind of a groovy thing. So that's what it seems like to me in my current thinking of it. So that's what we'll do. I'll keep on rolling with that. I think I went from the 7th scale degree, so we'll move on to the 9, and this is going to be a lean forward chord, 9, 11, and 13 this time, doing the lean forward chord defined by the 4th modal half step or the 2nd modal half step 3rd scale degree in the lean forward quadrant. All right. So if that terminology is too much, if that's not music anymore, then that's just fine. What we need to do is come up with we need to come up with a new term then to define the evolution of the music because we're making it better. That's the point. It's if it's not music, it's better. It's better than music was, and we need to. Okay. Let's try my rant before I get going. I have a rant. Warm-up joke rant. Okay. Let's see. All right, here we go. Put my other glasses on. My PowerPoint rant. Microsoft PowerPoint is still the best thing that needs to be done for the stand-up comedians. You got Jon Stewart out there looking like an old, cranky old dude. Like, you don't want to see me out there looking like I'd look even worse, for crying out loud. No, You look at these, like they can animate. You got a team of like 100 people. You can just create like Mid-Journey AI images and animate them and make funny images like so easy with your staff of like 1 million people over there. You know, like I feel like they're not really utilizing the resources that they have available to them to make to make it funny. I mean, I can almost deal with the propaganda if at least you gave me some AI animated images instead of an old man, cranky old guy there. At least at least I'm a cranky old guy with a younger with bright images, for crying out loud. Anyway, so let's go. This is gonna be the dodo bird, the first woke bird. You know, people always say going the way of the dodo like it's being too dumb to live. You know, they say go in the way of the dodo, and there's all these jokes about the stupid dodo that's being an idiot. You know, the poor dodo's been branded as history's village idiot, a fat, clueless bird that waddles into the stew pot, and that's why he became extinct, because he's a moron. But have you looked at the numbers lately? Declining birth rates, people refusing to have kids, building their identities around hashtags instead of family trees. I'm starting to think that the dodo didn't die because it was stupid. It died because it was educated. You ever think about that? Maybe the dodo wasn't a dummy. Maybe the dodo was the nerdy people that went extinct because they got too smart. Yeah, like the dodo was basically the bird equivalent of your average modern, overeducated liberal arts major. And I kind of include myself in some of these categories here, so I'm just saying I'm not like, it's not like I'm outside the realm of some of these things. I'm just saying it's likely that we might have to consider the possibility here that he got a degree in deconstructivist evolutionary ethics with a minor in post-flight gender theory. So it wasn't flightless, it just identified as grounded. So it's like it stopped flying. It was the first bird to look to the sky and go, flying is a social construct imposed by hawk supremacy. So then it stops the flying. That's how the colonialists do things. They like travel with and flight helps them do that. So you have to stop that. It probably held a protest called Defend the Wings, had little signs, no feathers, no fascism. Then it refused to migrate because migration was colonial behavior. Why should we move south? That's someone else's habitat. We'll stay right here and honor the swamp, for crying out loud. So it stayed right next to the tar pits, and Mother Nature said, all right, suit yourself. If that's the way you're going to reason this thing out, okay. I mean, you ever notice that the dodo didn't have predators? None. No predators. It got wiped out by philosophy. Every other animal's worried about food, survival, mating. The dodo's sitting around hosting TED Talks. Today we'll be exploring the ethics of eggs, people. They weren't extinct. They were too enlightened to breed. They called it reproductive minimalism. Didn't want to impose their values on the next generation, so they just stopped having one. The dodo believed in global warming. That's when the early bird gets shamed for breakfast privilege. You can't eat worms. We've got to raise awareness for them. They put out pamphlets. Don't consume worms. Coexist with worms. And then they starved. It's a sad story, but it's something that we need to learn from. And wind power. The dodo was all in on the wind power back in the day. We think we figured it out now, but no, they were on it first. Refused to flap its wings. Said, we let the breeze carry us. We're not going to expend unneeded energy. The problem is the breeze never showed up strong enough to give them enough lift to get off the ground. So they just stood there. waiting for government subsidies, for crying out loud. And don't forget decolonization. The dodo refused to live in trees because that was territorial oppression. They squatted in the mud proudly. They renamed the swamp the Autonomous Feathered Zone. And then a crocodile moved in. They called it diversity. Eventually, sailors showed up and said dinner. And the dodos didn't even run. They held a listening circle. Because they don't fly, they didn't run. So let's hear all perspectives, they said. Meanwhile, one guy's perspective was pass the salt. That's not stupidity. That's terminal education. It's the opposite of stupidity. It's terminal education. They were too self-aware to survive, people. They literally reasoned themselves off the food chain. They were the first victims of overthinking. And when people say, don't be a dodo, I say, dude, we already are. We're the only species intelligent enough to convince ourselves not to reproduce, not to defend ourselves, and not to question the guy that's actually eating us, because it might be offensive to the guy that's eating us. So the dodo, so the dodo didn't go extinct. It graduated. It got its master's degree in extinction studies. Its thesis was titled Deconstructing Survival: Why Being Alive Reinforces Oppression. So yeah, going the way of the dodo used to mean being dumb. Now it means being it means being so enlightened you forget how to live. The dodo didn't fly because it was too busy filing paperwork for a grant. It didn't nest because nesting was heteronormative. It didn't fight back because it wanted to de-escalate conflict. And that's how it ended. Not with a bang, not with a roar, but with a polite email to an ecosystem that said, due to unforeseen circumstances, we've decided to step away from existence to focus on self-care. That's how it goes. The dodo wasn't stupid. It was the first species to cancel itself. I wrote a song about it. Let's see what we have here.
You know, people always say going the way of the dodo, like it's about being too dumb to live. But maybe that bird was just too smart for its own feathers. The poor old dodo's been branded history's fool, a fat, clueless bird that waddled into a stew. But have you looked at the numbers lately, son? Declining birth rates, hashtags instead of young. I'm thinking maybe the dodo didn't die from stupidity. It died from a case of university. Got a degree in post-flight gender theory and a minor in self-made misery. It wasn't flightless, it identified as grounded, screaming hawk supremacy's unfairly founded. Held a protest called defund the wings. No feathers, no fascism. They chanted that thing. Refused to migrate, said that's colonial behavior. We'll stay in the swamp, we're our own savior. So it stayed right next to a tar pit, proud till Mother Nature said, all right then, bow. The dodo had no predators, no claws, no fangs, just philosophy and student loans to hang. Hosted a TED Talk, ethics of eggs, while the world moved on and spread its legs. They called it reproductive minimalism. Didn't want to impose their values, so they just stopped having values. Believed in global warming, bless their hearts, where the early bird gets shamed for trying too hard. Don't consume worms, coexist with them, they said, till the worms lived happy and the dodos dropped dead. The breeze was their power, the wind was their friend. Refused to flap, said nature will defend. But the breeze never came, just paperwork and pride, waiting for subsidized that never arrived. They called trees oppressive, moved to the mud, declared autonomous feathered zone with a thud. When a crocodile moved in, they called it diverse, till dinner got served. right, let's hear all perspectives. One calmly said, as a man with a fork whispered, pass the bread. That ain't stupidity, friend. That's terminal education. Too self-aware to survive. Reason themselves clean off the food chain. Now folks say don't be a dodo, but buddy, look around, we already are, yo. The only species smart enough to stop reproducing while saying it's progress, man, that's confusing. Dodo didn't go extinct, it graduated, got a master's degree, self-congratulated thesis, title carved in stone, being alive reinforced the throne. It didn't fly, too busy filing grants, didn't set heteronormative stance, didn't fight, just waved a peace flag high and vanished politely under the sky. No bang, no roar, no glory, no cry, just a polite email saying goodbye. Due to unforeseen circumstances, it read, we're stepping away from existence instead. The dodo wasn't stupid. It was the first species to cancel itself. The dodo wasn't stupid. It was the first species to cancel itself.
You already said that. It's pretty good though. Pretty good song, Suno. I'm impressed. Suno's got skills, man. Suno's got skills. People think Suno's crazy gonna take over the world, but it's not. Suno's not mad. It's just got mad skills. It's just got mad skills. Alright. Anyway. Okay. So let's see. Let's do this. So now we're on the Ionian. So I've got the 1, 3, 5. It lines up directly. It lines up nicely to our Nashville numbers. Now I'm losing my voice. For crying out loud. So here's the 3. The 5 was right there. So we have that. I was doing. This is our standard shape. Bam. Where's my pointer? But boom. And then we added the 7, Nashville number 7 up top, which we could put up top. But that 7 isn't like a static something you want to play in the chord, it seems, most of the time. Because you want it to lead in. To the close if you're playing in the Ionian. Alright. So but now let's add the 9. So I could just say, well, I'm on just Nashville number the Ionian, so I could just say 7, 8, 9. I would go to the 9, but 9 is over 7. So I'd have to say 9 minus 7, or 7 just goes around to 0, 1, 2. So I'm looking for the 2, which is 2 modal half steps up from the 7. And so that's going to be here, maybe this one out here. That's going to be too far to reach. I got one right up top, but then I lose the 3rd. I've got one maybe back here, but then I'm going to have to drop this 7 most likely. So let's think about it first. So if I'm adding the 9 for an Ionian mode, what would that be called? It would just be called a C major 9 typically, and I would have all the notes, but I'd rather call it something off of the Ionian node. So I'd rather call it, what are we on, a 5-note, an Ionian, a Nashville number 1 or Ionian 5-note chord, or an Ionian 8 modal half step or 9th scale degree chord, or a Nashville number 1 Ionian 8 divided by 2 4 modal whole step chord, because it's going to take 4 modal whole steps to get to here. So then what's the distance to get to that 9th, 8th modal half step or 9th? Notice that if it was a local distance, the 9 is equivalent to the 1st modal half step or 2nd scale degree. In other words, if I count that 1 and I go 1 modal half step or 1 note up in the collection of notes that we're in, it would be right there, 1 modal half step up. But if I count that as the 1 from a scale degree, it's 2, it's the 2nd, right? So we're going to say, all right, and so that's distance in notes is 2 notes up, which is the standard distance to get to the 1st modal half step or 2nd scale degree. They all have that distance except for the Phrygian and the Locrian. So that's Nashville number 3 and 7. Those are the only ones that you go up 1 half step to get to the 1st modal half step or 2nd scale degree. Okay, so we also, so that's fine. So then I can also call it by range, which would be Nashville number 1, 2 modal range chord, or Ionian Dorian modal range chord, or from a color system, yellow green to spring green modal range chord. Now the distance, if I'm looking for this one down here, the distance should be a local distance of 2 notes away, because the 9 is equivalent to the 9th is equivalent to the 2nd modal half step, which has a distance of 2 half steps away. So I can count that by saying 5 notes between these strings, 4, 3, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2. So that looks correct. So let's see if we can finger that. So there's my root. The 2's down here on the 3rd fret. I would like to finger both of these, but that's probably not the way it's going to work. So I'm probably going to end up dropping the 4th modal half step or 5th scale degree, Nashville number 5, which happens to be the G. And I can drop that thing and just say, let's do it this way. I mean, I could try to add this one like that. It's a little, it's not the, yeah, I can't really grab that one too easy. That's right. So it's a little tensiony, because that, even though it's a major 2nd, it's still pretty close. And I'm muting this with the meat of my pinky, that open string. Now, when I'm here, I obviously have an open, well, no, I have an open E at the bottom. So I could do it that way. That's kind of cheating to use the open string, but if I wanted, now so instead of grabbing this one, but no, let's keep it that way. Let's not do that right now. Okay, so I have a Dorian right above it. So this 2, I could move this 2 up to the open, and then if I wanted to play it like in this position, and kind of cheat with the open string. So it would be here to here. It's kind of muddy because it's too close. from a tension standpoint, maybe that could be good to do like as I'm leading into the root, like right there maybe. So I play that open D, so I get the tension. And then resolve. And then when I resolve to the 1, and I put this one down to bring that 4th modal half step or 5th scale degree. So if I reached up to this one, so now I'm just putting another 7 on top. And what if I like I'm like that and I'm leading in. And then I resolve. Well, I'm like that. And then I resolve by going boom, and then this one shifts to the 1, and then I cover up that D with the 4th modal half step 5th scale degree. So to get the best like way to transfer that from one. Like I can't really slide it in there if I have. Anyway, what was I doing? I have what was that? What did I just add? I was resolving the 7 to the 1, and I was doing this open D thing. Okay, if there's not any other, there's one back here. That's the one I was grabbing before. Okay, and there's one up here, so I can always toggle like between this one and the root. So if I was noodling around now, if I'm toggling around on this Ionian, I always like to think of like, what if it was on the top string? Then the third is not the minor distance, but it's the major distance. So instead of like the rock and roll shape, you'd have this distance. So that to me is kind of like out here. So there's the third is out here. So that's that bar, and it's kind of interesting because it's like the middle of what I call the 3 pillars shape. This is the 3 pillars, because if it was Mixolydian, if you go from Mixolydian, you've got the 3 pillars, and then Ionian. The majors are stacked. So the Ionian is like in the middle of the 3 pillars from a 3-note per string shape. So if I move that up here, same thing, 3-note per string. So that's harder for me to finger than if it was a minor distance, but it has actually more potential. It's not, I don't have huge hands, and I've got the dreadnought, so it should be, so if I can do it, I feel like you just got to twist your wrist up. I've seen Anna Kosushevitz or whatever, classical guitar lady. She doesn't look that big, and she could reach all these things. See, I always want to do the blues thing to muddy up the third, like that, but I don't think you're supposed to do that in like classical major scale. That's misuse. That doesn't sound beautiful. That's too groovy. That's too groovy, man. So you gotta like. So you gotta like, you don't even want to be on the root until you're gonna end on the root. You're hanging on the root too long. You gotta reveal the root. This up here. That's a B. Alright, anyway, getting carried away with my noodling. Let's move on. Let's move on to the 9, 10, 11. So the 11, if I just go up 2 notes from the 2 modal half steps up, would be 2, 3, 4. So I'm looking for a Nashville number 4, which is the Lydian. Lydian. You say it like a barbarian. This is Greek. Oh, ancient Greek, it's Lydion. I don't know how they would say it. I don't know how ancient Greek. Anyway. Let's see. Okay. So the 11 is equivalent to the 4, and the 4 is 3 modal half steps up from the 1, so you could still count it out. It's 3 modal half steps plus 1 would get you to the 4. The scale degree is 4, and the distance for a 3 modal half step or 4th scale degree happens to be almost all the time 5 notes away. So it has a 5-note clockwise distance, as we can see, because we crossed the fault line right there. Boom, 5-note distance. Now that's the distance, which again looks suspicious, like it's a minor distance, like it's a tritone. Because if it were anywhere else but between those 2 strings, because of the fault line, like if it was up here, it would be right underneath, and that's where the double stops go all the way across. But no, you've got normally the tritone shape right there, which I've been noodling around with to get my fingers used to that. Because that thing, once again, let's just point this out, should be movable to every modal point from Ionian to Dorian, has the same one. So I just go boom, the next one up, Dorian, it has the same distance, 5 note away from the Dorian distance. Same with the Phrygian, 5 note away from the Phrygian distance, same shape. And then we've got the same, but not for the Lydian, because Lydian has the crazy distance. Lydian's the one that's got the crazy distance. And so it looks like it's a normal distance, but no, there's the tritone on the Lydian, which looks like a normal 7 note away distance, if I got that right. I think I got that right. And then on the Mixolyd, back to it. So it's on all of them. That shape is ubiquitous, even though you would think it wouldn't be if you had normal shape logic in your mind. But you have to play into the account that there was an earthquake that happened back in the time of the dodo bird. Back at the time of the dodo bird, there was an earthquake called the fault line. So that you have a different distance between these. Back in the time of the dodo, there was a fault line happened. All right. So, there was an earthquake that caused the fault line. Tectonic plate shifted. Anyways, what would I call that? I would call that normally it would be a C major 11, but I'd rather call it something from the Ionian, so I would call it a Nashville number 1 or Ionian 6-note chord, or Nashville number 1 or Ionian 10 modal half step, or 11th scale degree chord, or 10 divided by 2 would be 5 modal whole steps. So Nashville 1 or Ionian 5 modal whole step chord, or by end point it can be a 1-4 modal range chord for the Nashville numbers, or Ionian Lydian modal range chord. There we go. Okay, so let me see. Grab that bad doggy. I'd have to do this here and still reach that one. So I'm going to bar that one off maybe. Grab that bad doggy before it eats the dodo. So that should be a fairly stable sound because it doesn't clash with anything we're holding down, right? The Lydian would normally clash with the 7. So if I was to add the Nashville number 7, which is the scale degree 7 as well, 7th scale degree 6th modal half step, then it would clash. You would think. How could I grab that? That would be right there. So you're going to get a clash. The clash isn't happening because of the root. It's because anytime you get the LLs together with the Latin name LLs together, that's Locrian and Lydian, then they fight. Then they're going to fight because they have a 6-note away distance, either clockwise or counterclockwise, +6 or -6. They just don't get along. It's like oil and water. It's like oil and water. So if I want to add that one, and I just don't want, if I just drop the 7, it's like we're going to invite the Lydian to the party, but if we do, we can't invite the Locrian, but then the Locrian gets pissed, but it's like, dude, like, we'll invite you to the next one, and then we'll leave, like, Lydian out, because... So, I could put the Locrian on top. So I have another, so I could drop, so I have another one up here, but that's, so I've got one way out here, which is interesting. Can't really read if I was to go back and forth. I've been experimenting with using every finger on the walk back. Is that more efficient than going like... Let's try. So I had one down here. Oh, wait. Undo that. I had one down here. I got one back here. That's too far back. That's too far back. Come on. Come on, man. All right. I can toggle between these two maybe to grab my third up top. So that's the kind of resolve. That kind of has a half step resolve back. It's kind of interesting. Because if I was doing... If I grabbed, so here's the one where I have, like, I can do low green, kind of a diminished chord. And then switch those two. Like that, right? And then I switch these two around. Boom, boom. Resolve. Tension. Resolve. So let's try. So if I was like, okay. Tension. Maybe I can even put this one back here and play that open D. Start it out, I'll play this one back here and the open D, tension, and then I try to slide up nice and smoothly here to the root, here to the root, and this one back, and then add the 5. Hermoso. Trying to grab with my pinky down here like a full G chord, and then All right, one more. Let's add the last one. The 13. The 13 is 12 modal half steps up 13th scale degree, which has a local distance of 5 modal half steps or 6 scale degree. So we're looking for the 6, which is Nashville numero 6. Happens to be in the key of C and A. So I have one up top here. And so I could do that one, tidal bass. And so we're going to say that if I'm adding the 6 from an A Ionian node, it's going to have a distance of a major distance, which is 9 note half steps away. So 9 note half steps away, but I'm going to the one above this time. So that's going to be 12 minus 9 to get a negative distance of 3. So I can count that out by saying 5 notes between the strings, 10, and then 15. So it would be 15, but I want to have the local counterclockwise distance, which would be 15 minus 12, or 5 minus 2, which would be negative 3. And then to get the clockwise distance, negative 3 minus positive 12 would get us to 9, I believe. All right. What would I call that? Well, it would be a major C major 13 if I had all the notes in play generally, but I can just drop the ones in the middle, still call it the same thing. Or I can call it from the Ionian node, it's going to be Nashville number 1 Ionian 7-note chord. So you just pick every other modal half step, drop the ones in the middle, every other scale degree in this case, and then and I could say that it's going to be an Ionian 12 modal half step or 13 scale degree chord, or 12 divided by 2, 6 modal whole steps to get to the end note. So it's going to be a Nashville number 1 Ionian 6 modal whole step chord, or by end point it would be Nashville number 1/6 modal range chord. Just take every other note, go in a clockwise direction, drop the ones in the middle. Or I can say it's going to be an Ionian Mixolydian modal range chord, or from a color system, yellow, green to red modal range chord. So that should be a pretty pleasant distance in general. Like if I go to this one down here first, it should be a nice majory distance, you would think, because it's pretty far away, and it's got the so like, and that shape from here to here, by the way, if it wasn't crossing the fault line, it would look like this. Can you see that? Maybe that's not on the screen. It would look like this. But then this fault line shifted up back in the day of the dodo. Back in the days of the dodo and Joe Biden, there was an earthquake, shifted the fault line up, and so that means that this had to move up to here. The dodo wasn't the dumb one. The smart one died and the dumb one lived. Biden lived, and Biden didn't go extinct, but the dodo was too dumb or too smart to move on. The dodo was too smart to go. Okay. Anyway, so is it clashing with anything else? I don't think so. I don't think it's clashing, so it should fit pretty nicely with everything, I think, for the most part. So I can go here. Maybe I'll just bar this whole thing off. Now when I do that, it looks like an A minor 7, which which I guess it is from that standpoint. But I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the C. What if I put it on the bottom? And then I have another third. That's cool. I don't really even need this third up here, but I'll keep it there anyway. This is basically the G shape.